I'm your host, Sean McKenzie. Thank you for joining me once again on my channel on data engineering and data analytics. In this episode, we're going back to our Python playlist and we're going to take a look at multi-threading. And multi-threading is a very handy way that you can start your program and you can accomplish two tasks at the same time or more. And that makes it very, very good for parallel processing. Now, today's discussion will be about multi-threading, and Python also has multi-processing, which is another thing which I'll be coming back to in a future episode. So what I'd like to do today is I'm going to load up two pandas data frames, and I'm going to cycle through the records that are in those data frames, and I'm going to do them on two separate threads so you can see the output happening at different times, and I'm going to put a time delay which is different between the two, and that way you'll get to see kind of how two threads are operating in a multi-threaded environment. So without further ado, let's get to our Python multi-threading. Okay, so for today's example, I'm just using default Python installation that you can get from python.org, and a few other little goodies that were in there like PyODBC, but you can see those in my earlier episodes if you're interested in how to get those. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to import PyODBC so that I can get my data set. I'm going to import pandas because I'm going to get two data frames that we're going to use for this example. And then I'm going to import threading, and I'm going to import time because I'm going to have a time delay when I cycle through some of this stuff, and I just want to slow it down so that you can see the execution as it goes. And I'll give a little bit of feedback to the user, just saying I'm opening the database, and I'll create my connection string. I'm going to paste one in here that I've used a couple times before. This is to an Access database that's on my system here I've used for a lot of the examples. I'll just paste that and we'll be good to go. Next, I'll create the connection. So I'll just say CNN is equal to pyo.connect. I'll use my connection string for that. And then I'll create an SQL string just to get some data out of that database. We've seen these tables a few times if you've been watching my videos. So this is very simple. One is going to be a candy table. It's got an assortment of candy in a few rows, and I'll make a data frame from that. I'll say candy is equal to pd.readsql, and then I'll just put in my SQL string in my connection. That's going to return a data frame, which is nice and handy, nicely typed data frame, since it's coming from a database and not a CSV file. The same thing with our project data. We're going to get another data frame, and that's going to have some project data in it. It's like a few rows that has some tasks and suggestions for a fictional software project kind of thing. And we'll do the same thing. We'll call our projects data frame projects, and we're going to do a pd.readsql, and we'll put our SQL and our connection in there. And then we'll close our connection to the database. You always want to make sure you close your connection before you move on to do anything else, so that you release all those resources. And then I can sort of do a print here. I'm going to do a print. I'm just going to show you the data that we're getting out of there. And I can do that by just doing a print of the data frame.head. I'm actually not sure if these have more than 10 rows each, so might not need the 10, but anyway, let's save that, and then we'll press F5, and there we go. So now you can see there's two different tables. I've got one that's got some candy in it, like white chocolate and cherry bombs, and then I've got some actions in a project database and some suggestions and statuses and things. And so we're going to use that data, and we're going to multi-thread that by cycling through each of those guys separately, just to show you how you can do two operations sort of at the same time with shared resources. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a function called cycle rows, and all it's going to do is it's going to go through the rows of each of a data frame, and it's going to have a delay, and on each row it's going to output the row, and that's going to wait for the delay, so it could be 1 second, 2 seconds, that kind of thing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say, the number of rows is equal to the length of the data frame, and then for for row and in range rows, I'm going to print the data frame, and I'll use iloc there, and I'll put the row in there, and that's going to print that row, all of the data in that row, and then after it does the print, it's just going to sleep for whatever seconds that we give it. So the delay variable argument there is going to cause it to delay. So if we put 1 second, it'll pause for 1 second. If we put 2 seconds, it'll wait for 2 seconds, and then it'll go to the next row. So from there, why don't we just test that out to make sure that our cycle rows is working, our function. So I'll just put it at the end of our at the end here, kind of like we did where we printed the head, except this time we're going to use our cycle rows function. It's going to go through, and I'll put a 1 second delay, and then I'll hit F5 and see how that goes. So there you go. It's giving a 1 second delay. You can see chocolate and gum circles and cherry bombs and toffee, and okay, so all the rows have been output using our cycle rows function. And then from there, now we want to look at how to do the multi-threading part of it. So we've got our data, we've got a thing that'll spit it out on a delay. Now we want to do our multi-threading. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a class, and we'll call it show rows in this case. And the argument's going to be a thread. So we're going to we'll put a thread in there, and then we're going to do the initializing of it. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to override the arguments for the class there, and we're going to add a bunch more by using. We'll put in self, and we'll put in a thread number and a name, say, and a data frame and a delay, because that's what we want to. That's what we want to happen on our thread. And so here's what we get to say when we want, our thread to initialize the attributes here. And so we'll say thread.init and then self, and then we'll do self.thread number. This is where we can set all of the the attributes. We'll say self.thread number is equal to thread number. Self.thread name is equal to the name that we're going to give it, and then self.data frame is equal to the data frame we're passing in, and self.delay is equal to the delay. And so at that point, we've got all the items that we need, or all the attributes that we need, and then we can define our run function here, which is going to say what's going to happen when this thread runs. And we've got what I'll do first is I'll print out the name of the thread, and then I'll just say that it is starting. And then on the next line, what I'm going to do is we'll use our cycle rows function, and whatever data frame we pass into it will be the argument for the function, and then whatever the argument was for the delay, we'll also pass that in, and therefore our cycle rows will be running on a different thread, and then when the thread is completed, we can give some output back to the user just to say, hey, this is the thread is exiting, and then we can sort of move on from there. And then I'll get rid of some extra rows here, and just to make better use of space there. And then what I'll do is go down. Now we're going to go down and set up our threads. So what I'll say is thread 1 is equal to show rows, and then I'll give that the number thread number 1. I'll say the name is thread 1, and we'll pass in the candy data frame, and then a 4-second delay, just so it's nice and slow, and then we can actually see what's happening as it is executing. And then on thread 2, what I'll do is I'll use our show rows again, set up that thread with thread number 2, and I'll call it thread 2, and we'll put in projects data frame, and I'll put a 3-second delay on that one. That one has more records, and so maybe that one will be easier to see, and also you'll see a difference as it executes. So then what we're going to do is we're gonna say thread 1 start, and we're going to say thread 2 start, and then we're gonna say thread 1 dot join and thread 2 dot join, and that's going to join it back to our main thread so that execution is not all out of order. Because if you don't join it, it will you could have a really long one that'll just keep going after the main thread is completed. So we'll give some feedback to the user. We'll say the main thread already or the main thread exits, and then we can check things over here before we run it. And it looks like I left a bracket off here, so I put a bracket on that print statement there. Look over everything else, and then let's hit F5 and just see what happens here. Okay, so there you go. They're off to the races, and there's a 4-second delay on the candies, but you can see that the projects are happening in between. So we've got candies and then project items. There's some gum circles followed by creating landing pages, and these are executing at the same time. And so you can sort of get an idea for how this multi-threading works. They are able to share the same resources, which is the nice thing about multi-threading. And so there you can see the main thread, the first thread exited, the second thread exited, and there's the main thread which exited last. And that's what we wanted to see. And that's how you can do multi-threading in Python. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion on how to do multi-threading in Python. If you like what you saw today, please give the video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed yet, and make sure to click the bell when you see the bell. And if you have any questions or comments, make sure to put those in the comment section below. Have a great day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.